Hey everyone, Rin here, and thank you for coming. And tonight we're going to be taking a deeper look at the latest Marvel series to arrive on Disney+. Here are my thoughts on episode 2 of Moon Knight. Welcome back everyone. Coming off of a hot debut in episode 1 last week, episode 2 of Moon Knight arrives this week to a bevy of much anticipation. Let me start off by saying I love the primal introspection with which this episode opened, giving us the sounds of a creature growling and gnawing at something, and then Steven pounding out of bed and running to only be pulled down by the chain around his leg, having last seen him being the monster that was beating the life out of another monster. The sand from last week is also still around his bed. I love the shot of him walking into the museum here upside down, having turned the place inside out last time he was there. The episode gets right into it, hitting us with tons of exposition throughout as we see Steven return to work, the scene of all of last week's chaos, and hilariously review the security camera footage with the guard, thinking it's going to show the fallout from last week's episode, and of course it doesn't. It all works out perfectly to just show him being kinda weird. He then of course gets fired by HR and referred to some doctors, which he could probably actually use, and we do know at some point he does end up in a psychiatric hospital just based off some of the trailer shots we've seen. I like that we once again get to see him talk to the street performer, and this time he even hugs him and we actually see his eyes move. The cool bit about this is that this character turns out to be an Easter egg for the character's third personality we've yet to see, Jake Lockley. So in the comics, Jake Lockley is a cab driver who functions at the street level, gaining intel from passerby and customers. By doing this, Lockley develops a network of useful informants, one of the more prominent ones being a homeless man by the name of Bertrand Crowley, who the street performer we've been seeing Steven talk to was credited as being in the first episode.
Why try and stay awake at night? What you think? Nah.
Oh, mate, thank you.
Oh, thanks. Cheers.
Things really start to pick up as Steven heads to the store's locker location he finds keys for, shots from which we saw in a few of the trailers leading up to the show's release. So at this point, Steven finds Marc's getaway and begins to realize it's all actually been real, finally giving us the full name drop of Marc Spector from his passport. We also see our MacGuffin here again in the scarab, which at this point now begins to float and seems to be a compass of some sort, which is confirmed later in the episode as we're told it points to Amit's burial site. It was awesome seeing Marc and Steven come face to face again, and Steven actually listening to Marc and not discounting him as not being real. I have really liked the way the show has chosen to use mirrors and reflections to create the link and the dialogue between the two personalities. Marc tells Steven that he serves Khonshu, the Egyptian god of the moon, and that he's his avatar, and that Steven sort of is too, and that they protect the vulnerable and deliver Khonshu's justice. Marc made a deal with Khonshu, contingent on Steven not interfering, which now of course he's begun to, and that in and of itself is creating all kinds of problems.
What? Am I like meant to be some sort of mad secret agent or something?
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that. I serve Khonshu. I'm his avatar, which means you are too. Sort of.
Oh my god, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
With all of the Disney Plus shows, I've begun to notice the trend that they all have that episode that really slows down the pace of everything and lays out the story and the plot. And for me, that's what this episode felt like. We finally get to see Khonshu again as Steven flees with Marc's personal items, leading to Layla arriving. Following up on one of the biggest questions coming out of last week, we finally get the lowdown on the Layla character, finding out that her and Marc are actually married and possibly about to be divorced. Layla turns out to be a completely new creation of the show, as in the comics, his partner is usually a character by the name of Marlene. but popular belief thus far believes she's a combination possibly of Marlene and Frenchie, which I think is unlikely as we saw a Duchamp on Marc's missed calls last week. Layla and Steven and the entire sequence back at his loft further builds upon the overall sense of confusion it would seem the show wants the viewer to experience along with Steven, and I genuinely begin to feel bad for both he and Layla for very different reasons. I really do hope we get a flashback at some point to the adventures that Layla references she and Marc have had. Layla and Steven actually seem to have a lot in common, which would make a ton of sense, but before we get too much though of this promising dynamic, we're interrupted by the authorities, who we believe are there for Steven because of his brawl in the museum, which is not the case at all, as they are servants of Harrow and Ahmed and take him straight to them. But not before we get a little more backstory on Marc Spector.
Guess what we've got here, Billy? We've only got ourselves a full-blown international fugitive.
Stop. That's a mistake.
Zip-tied and shot in the back of the head. Execution style.
Do you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear, Stephen Grant.
Now, I must say that I found this part of the episode the most entertaining, as we see Arthur try to level with Steven about what all is going on. He seems to be incredibly knowledgeable and in the know about everything that is going on and Khonshu, and even more surprisingly so, he's calm about all of it. He even goes so far as to comfort Steven when Khonshu is getting angry and sending wind gusts, letting him know that that's all he can do without Steven or Marc. Arthur also lets Steven know that he too was once Khonshu's avatar, which I didn't anticipate. The show goes a long way here to first show Arthur as a rational, patient man that has aided in changing the community they're walking through from bad to good, and then shows you his dark turn once Steven shows resistance to the idea that Ahmed pulls evil up from the root before it can begin, in contrast to Khonshu being the fist of vengeance once the evil has already been committed.
Sorry, if Amit judges people pre-evil, like before the fact, I mean, a thought can't be evil, can it? About a child? Would she kill a child for something they might do in 30 years?
So, I think it's safe to say this episode didn't disappoint. The ending fight and conflict sequences more than made up for the slow start the episode got off to. Arthur, after being denied the scarab by Steven and eventually Layla, unleashes another jackal using his cane, imbued with Ahmed's power, and we see Steven finally transform after being begged to do so by Layla and Marc both, becoming Mr. Knight in a sense and confronting the jackal, which only he can see. My theory here is that only people that have either died or been avatars can see these creatures, because from Layla's perspective we can see that she sees nothing. The fight scene was full of lies for me in the first part, as we see Steven try to take his own shot at the Mr. Knight gig before relinquishing control to Marc, and we get the full classic Moon Knight costume as Layla instructs Marc to lead the jackal away, which afforded us some really great visuals on the way to Marc dispatching the creature. Closing it out, I like the dynamic that the show seems to be developing between Steven and Marc, with Khonshu in the wings. At this point, I don't believe we as the audience are supposed to know whose side to be on, and if we should fully trust and or like Khonshu, because he sort of comes off very manipulative, threatening Marc that if he wants to be relieved of his avatar duties, he'll just go and choose Layla. I'm very interested to see where the show will take us following this, now that Arthur has the scarab and Layla seems to not currently be at Marc's side at the end when we see him in Egypt. In closing, this second episode further cemented and continued the streak of brilliance that episode 1 began last week. I am so incredibly impressed with what it seems the team behind Moon Knight has managed to bring to the table. With this series only being 6 episodes, there really isn't much time to waste, so I fully expected for an episode like this one to come along that was full of exposition to move the story along and help facilitate the plot. I'm still loving all of the performances, and I really hope we get more shots in the suit and of Khonshu as well, and I'm also kind of hoping we get to see Ahmed even. I will of course be continuing to cover all interesting works of theatrical content from the likes of Marvel, DC, and Star Wars. and films from all walks of life that I have the pleasure of watching. And if you feel so inclined, I would love to have you back here week in and week out to continue to cover it all with us. Again, guys, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and click that bell for notifications if you've enjoyed our content here tonight. Jump down in the comments and let me know your thoughts. And while you're at it, be sure to check out some of the other content here on the channel. All of the necessary links are listed here below for you to keep up with the coming content and shareables. Please be sure to follow me on all social media platforms, or just the one you use most frequently. We are slowly but surely building a community here, and I would personally love for you to be a part of that. And last but not least, we have a merch store. So whether you see something you like or just simply want to support the channel, head on over to our shop and grab something, or grab everything. But again, thank you so much, guys and gals, for visiting here with us today. I really appreciate each and every viewing minute of your time you've given us. There's loads of content we'll be sending your way, so I'll be seeing you. But for now, be blessed. And it was written.
Looking out across the nighttime, the city sleep inside. Yeah, hear her voice shake my window, sweet seduce.